Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We are here again, ready to take, well, complex systems, sometimes dense design documents, intriguing rule books, and really distill them down into the key things you need to know to get up to speed quickly. Today, we're plunging into the blueprints of a really ambitious tabletop role-playing game system, Last Daydream.
Yeah, this one's quite the undertaking to examine. It's like an architectural study almost. The core claim, the big promise of Last Daydream, is total genre flexibility. One system to rule them all, basically.
Ambitious.
Very. So our mission for you, the listener, is to really grasp not just the mechanics, how the dice work, but the philosophy behind it. How did they build a system that's meant to adapt? Whether you're running, say, a low-magic dungeon crawl or this epic cosmic saga where player powers literally start messing with the laws of physics.
Okay, let's start unpacking that, because for anyone maybe newer to tabletop RPGs, a system like Last Daydream is, at its heart, collaborative storytelling.
Yeah.
Purely that. It's a shared adventure, you've got a game master, the GM, guiding things, and you're using strategic thinking, dice rolls, to figure out what happens in this fictional story.
And the source material, the rulebook itself, is really explicit on this point. It says, look, the goal isn't about winning or losing in the traditional sense.
No leaderboards here.
Exactly. It's about crafting a memorable narrative together.
Yeah.
You, as the player, you're kind of the actor and the director for your character's journey.
And that focus, that narrative flexibility you mentioned, that seems to be the bedrock of the whole thing.
It really is. That central design idea, it's powerful. They even have a mantra for it. Mechanical consistency enabling narrative flexibility.
Okay.
The whole point is a single, streamlined rule set. They want to get rid of that need to learn a whole new game every time you want to switch genres. Ancient fantasy, gritty noir, cosmic horror.
The engine stays the same.
The engine stays the same. That's the goal. Only the dials and settings change, adjusted by the GM.
That's a massive design challenge, though.
Yeah.
Making every mechanic feel right across all those potential settings. So what's the most fundamental piece? The absolute core mechanic we'd be using constantly?
Well, they kept that part deliberately familiar, likely for accessibility. Whenever an action your character takes is challenging or the outcome's uncertain, you grab a 20-sided die, a D20.
The classic.
The classic D20. You add a relevant bonus, which comes from your character's attributes and skills. We'll get into those. And you compare that total number to a target number. It's that D20 bedrock. Very familiar.
Okay, standard D20 roll. And the system uses that roll in two main ways, right? One for when you're directly clashing with someone and another for, overcoming an obstacle.
Precisely. They distinguish those clearly.
Yeah.
For any conflict with another character, could be a sword duel, a tense negotiation, maybe even a hacking battle, the default method is the opposed check.
Both sides roll.
Yep, both sides roll, add their modifiers, higher total wins. Simple, direct resolution. But for static challenges, things like, say, trying to force open a jammed airlock, navigating a tricky asteroid field, picking a really complex futuristic lock, you use difficulty checks, or DC.
And the GM sets that number.
The GM sets the target number, the DC. And the scale they provide goes from DC 5, which they label trivial, all the way up. DC 30, DC 35, those are marked as legendary or even mythic. So a huge range of challenge is possible.
I noticed reading through the materials, there's a deliberate move away from just relying on static numbers like a fixed health pool or armor class that never changes. How does the game manage resources? What drives the action economy?
Yeah, that's a key design pillar. It's driven by, I'd say, three main interconnected things. First, you've got action points, or AP. These fuel basically everything you do, especially in tactical situations like combat.
Okay.
Second, there are story tokens. These are a different kind of resource, giving players actual narrative control, letting them influence the plot, maybe re-roll a disastrous failure, that sort of thing.
We'll definitely need to dig into those later.
Oh, yeah. And third, and this is a really significant shift from many traditional RPGs, is the principle of no fixed defense stat.
Right. No static armor class or defense value. You just compare attacks against. Why do that? What's the benefit of making defense dynamic and active?
Well, the problem they're trying to solve, I think, is that feeling of passivity in combat. In a lot of systems, you have your armor class number and you just sit there while the GM rolls, tells you if you got hit. You don't do anything.
They're just a target number.
Exactly. Last Daydream wants players actively involved in their own defense. So defense is always a choice. You spend an action point to actively dodge or parry or maybe resist a mental effect. And critically, the roll you make uses the most appropriate attribute for whatever you're facing.
So context matters.
Hugely. If someone tries to physically tackle you, Maybe you roll dexterity to slip away, or maybe you roll strength to stand your ground. If it's a psychic blast, you're probably rolling willpower to resist, a computer virus, maybe intelligence to outthink it. It keeps players engaged on everyone's turn and makes defense feel thematic, not just like a passive number.
Okay, that definitely paints a picture of a more fluid, reactive game. Let's start building a character then, moving into Section 2, Attributes and Skills. The foundation seems to be 8 core attributes defining innate potential. What are they?
Right. The 8 attributes. They represent the character's raw, inherent capabilities, and they're grouped pretty logically into 3 categories. You've got the physical attributes, strength for raw power, dexterity for agility and coordination, and stamina for endurance and health.
Makes sense.
Then the mental attributes, intelligence for logic and analysis, wisdom for intuition and awareness, and willpower for mental toughness and focus. And finally, the social attributes, appearance, which is about visual perception, and charisma, covering leadership, presence, force of personality.
Now, the source material really hammers this point. These attribute levels are meant to be absolute definitions. Why is that so critical for a system claiming universal applicability?
It's all about maintaining that mechanical consistency across genres. If your character achieves, say, Strength 6, the rules state that means they can lift a small car, punch through a brick wall. And that definition holds true whether they're a fantasy barbarian in loincloth or a cyborg mercenary in power armor.
So the GM can't just arbitrarily weaken stats in a different setting.
Exactly. It builds player trust that the core numbers mean something consistent. And we should probably highlight a couple of key attributes here. Stamina is vital because it's the main factor determining your hit points, HP, your basic physical resilience.
Your toughness.
Right. And willpower is basically the mental equivalent. It's crucial for resisting psychic attacks, mental manipulation, anything that targets the mind. It's your mental fortitude stat.
Okay, so attributes are the raw potential, the natural gift. Skills then represent the training, the learned stuff.
Yeah.
How do these two work together? Because this seems to be where they introduce a key balancing mechanic, the skill cap.
Yes, and this is, I think, one of the more elegant pieces of the design. A skill level itself is straightforward. A level 4 skill gives you a +4 bonus to relevant rolls. Level 8 gives +8. Simple.
Okay.
But they tackle that classic RPG issue, the super genius fighter who's depicted as incredibly clumsy, or the charismatic brute with 0 intellect. They address that with the skill cap.
How does that work?
Every single skill in the game is explicitly linked to 2 specific attributes. And here's the rule. Your skill level in that skill cannot go higher than the sum of those 2 governing attributes.
Okay, so let's take an example. If I want to be a master sniper, and the marksmanship skill is linked to, say, dexterity and wisdom. And I've got a character who's maybe a bit shaky, dex 2, but very perceptive, wisdom 4.
Then your marksmanship skill level is capped at 6. That's 2 + 4. You simply cannot train it higher than level 6 unless you increase either your dexterity or your wisdom.
Right. It forces a connection between innate talent and trained expertise.
Yeah.
Your natural abilities have to support your learned skill.
Precisely. It maintains that internal logic, that thematic consistency, regardless of the genre you're playing in. And what's more, the system often lets you choose which of the 2 linked attributes you use for a specific role, adding another layer of flexibility.
How did that work in practice?
Well, take the melee skill. Maybe it's linked to strength and dexterity. If you're making a powerful, crushing blow with a warhammer, you declare you're using melee plus strength.
Okay.
But if you're making a lightning-fast rapier thrust aimed at a weak spot, you'd probably declare melee plus dexterity. The system lets your approach influence the mechanics, not just the description.
That's neat. I also saw the system specifically breaks out different types of combat skills. Why not just have one combat skill?
Yeah, they separate them for clarity and to encourage specialization. You have combat, which covers unarmed fighting, grappling, things like that. Then melee, specifically for hand-to-hand weapon swords, axes, laser swords, whatever. And finally, marksmanship, which handles all ranged attacks, from bows and thrown knives to plasma rifles and grenades.
So being a great boxer doesn't automatically make you a crack shot.
Exactly. It prevents skill bloat and makes character concepts more distinct.
And as skills increase, players get specialties. How do those refine a character's expertise?
They're like little bonus rewards for focusing your training. For every 3 full levels you gain in a skill, so at level 3, then 6, then 9, and so on, you get to pick a specialty within that skill.
Like melee, swords, or technology, hacking.
Exactly that kind of thing. Marksmanship, pistols, stealth. urban environments. When you're making a role that directly involves your specialty, you get an extra +1 bonus on top of your regular skill bonus. It represents that deeper focus, being not just good at tech, but really good at bypassing security systems specifically.
Okay, makes sense. Let's talk about defining a character's tactical style right from the beginning. There's a really important permanent choice regarding action points and initiative.
Yes, this is a foundational decision you make at character creation, and you can't change it later. You must choose either dexterity or intelligence to determine two key things: your initiative bonus, who acts first, and your starting pool of action points, AP, each round.
So that choice immediately paints a picture of how the character operates under pressure.
Absolutely. A character using dexterity is likely quick, reactive, relying on physical reflexes. They might act sooner, but perhaps have slightly fewer AP. A character using intelligence is more calculating, analytical. They might act a bit later in the round, but potentially get more AP to execute more complex plans or use more abilities.
The quick scout versus the strategic commander archetype.
Precisely. It locks in a core part of their tactical identity right away.
That covers the standard way of getting better increasing attributes and skills. But what if the GM sets a limit? Say, attributes can't go above level 4 in this campaign. How do experienced characters keep developing?
This is where Last Daydream introduces a really interesting concept they call horizontal growth, using something called benchmark abilities.
Okay, horizontal growth, how does that work?
So imagine your character hits the campaign attribute cap. Let's say Strength 4 is the maximum allowed. You've earned enough attribute XP to normally increase it to Strength 5, but you can't because of the cap.
Right, so the XP is wasted.
No. Instead of buying Strength 5, you spend that same amount of XP, the cost it would have taken to reach level 5, to purchase a special benchmark ability associated with Strength 4 or lower.
I see. So instead of just getting a bigger number, you get a new specific way to use the strength you already have, like an ability called Mighty Leap or Iron Grip.
Exactly. It lets you customize how you express your attributes, rather than just endlessly increasing the raw scores. It's a clever way to allow for continued character development and specialization, even when vertical progression is capped. Two characters could both have Strength 4, but if one bought Power Leap and Crush, and the other bought Immovable Stance and Ignore Pain, they play completely differently.
That keeps things fresh, especially in longer campaigns. Let's make this concrete using their example character, Maya Chen. She's described as a methodical corporate security specialist. How does her starting build show these principles?
Right, Maya's built for precision and thinking ahead. Her stats reflect that. She has high dexterity 4 and equally high intelligence 4.
So right away, she has that crucial choice for initiative and AP, Dex 4 for speed, or In 4 for more actions.
Exactly. That choice will define her turn-to-turn gameplay loop. Is she the quick infiltrator darting between cover, or the tactical genius coordinating actions?
And her skills are directly tied to those high attributes through the skill cap.
Perfectly. Her technology skill is at 5. Her cap for that skill, based on Int 4 plus Dex 4, is 8. So she has plenty of room to grow, but her current level is well supported by her innate talents.
Okay.
Her marksmanship is at 4. The example notes this is linked to Dex 4, and, maybe interestingly, a decent Wisdom 3. So her cap there is 7, 4 plus 3. This tells you she's not just fast and smart, she's also perceptive, focused when lining up a shot.
So the build tells a story even before you add powers.
Right. She's a competent, balanced professional. Her high attributes mean she can effectively train her skills up to a respectable level. She's got a solid foundation ready for the next layer, which is where the system gets really unique: the extraordinary abilities and the impact scale.
Okay, yeah, let's get into that. Section 3, the impact scale. This really feels like the heart of the Last Daydream system, the thing that justifies its claim of being universal. It's meant to measure everything extraordinary.
Absolutely. The impact scale, measured by a number called impact level, or IL, is, like you said, probably the single most important dial in the whole system. Its purpose is to provide a unified measurement for all kinds of special abilities.
So magic spells, psychic powers, super science gadgets, mutations, they all use the same scale.
That's the core idea. Whether it's a fireball, a telekinetic blast, an energy shield from a high-tech generator, or a mutant healing factor, its power and scope are defined by its IL. This is huge for the GM because it means they only have one power curve to balance across the entire campaign, regardless of the specific flavor or source of the player's powers.
One scale to rule them all, indeed. Now, the scale itself is interesting. It's not just 1, 2, 3, 4. It jumps after 7. Why structure it that way with gaps? IL 1 through 7, then 10, 12, 15?
The designers seem to have wanted those power increases, especially the higher ones, to feel like significant qualitative leaps, not just small incremental bumps. The scale goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. These represent gradual improvements, maybe pushing the boundaries of human potential. Then it jumps 10, 12, 15, 17, 20, and keeps going up, eventually reaching 100. That first big jump from IL-7 to IL-10 is meant to signify crossing a threshold, moving from maybe a peak human specialist into genuinely superhuman or supernatural territory. It helps manage the narrative feel of power escalation. Getting to IL-10 isn't just like getting 10% better. It puts you in a different league.
So an IL number tells you two things about an ability at the same time.
Correct. It defines first the power, the raw mechanical effect. How much damage it does, how far it reaches, how many hit points it heals, how long it lasts, all the hard numbers.
On the second day.
The second thing it defines is variety. The IL number also dictates the maximum number of distinct sub-abilities or specific applications you can have within that themed ability set. So an IL-7 fire magic set might allow you up to 7 different fire-related spells or effects. It links power level directly to tactical breadth.
That's clever. And the system includes a way to use less power than your maximum, right? The downshifting concept.
Yes, downshifting is really important for tactical control and, frankly, narrative sense. Just because your character can unleash an IL-15 reality warping effect doesn't mean you want to every single time. Maybe you just need a small burst of energy.
Right, you don't use a nuke to swat a fly.
Exactly. So if you have that IL-15 ability, you can choose to use it at a lower impact level, maybe dial it down to IL-5 for a controlled blast, or even IL-3 for a minor effect. You just declare the IL you're using before you make the roll. It keeps player agency front and center regarding the consequences of their actions. You can even use powers at IL-0, cosmetic, just for flavor, making your sword glow harmlessly, for instance.
Let's spend a moment really trying to grasp the narrative scope implied by these IL numbers, because this is how a GM defines their campaign world's limits. IL-5 is considered standard.
Yeah, IL-5 is described as the standard power level. Think reliable, repeatable effects, the core tools for most encounters. The examples given are things like dealing around 76 damage solid, but not overwhelming or healing about 80 HP, enough to bring someone back from the brink in a fight. Moving up slightly, IL-7 is where you start getting into effects that can really turn the tide of a typical fight, maybe the upper end for a highly skilled mortal specialist.
But then we hit those jumps, IL-10, IL-15. That's where things get properly superhuman or supernatural.
Absolutely. IL-10 strong effects are often described as scene-dominating. This might be where you could summon a significant elemental creature or achieve true invisibility for a short time. IL-15, supernatural, is encounter-defining. Now you're talking about abilities that reshape the battlefield, summoning a localized lightning storm, animating a small group of constructs, maybe teleporting the whole party. This feels like the baseline for high fantasy heroes, or maybe street-level superheroes.
And then the scale keeps climbing into really reality-bending territory.
It does. The source gives some pretty stark examples for the higher tiers. IL-30, Reality Break, is where characters start fundamentally messing with the established rules of the game's reality.
How so?
Examples include being able to retroactively change one failed roll you just made into a success. Or, even more dramatically, the power to define a significant fact about the immediate environment that the GM hadn't already established, like suddenly revealing there is a hidden escape tunnel behind the tapestry, or declaring that a key NPC actually has a specific hidden motive.
Wow, okay. That's shifting power from the player as just an actor to almost a co-author of the scene. And the scale goes even higher. What's at the absolute top? IL-100.
IL-100 Transcendent represents the ultimate level of narrative alteration. This is the kind of power associated with literal gods or cosmic entities in the setting. The examples are things like merging alternate timelines, ascending to godhood and becoming a constellation, or fundamentally rewriting the history or nature of an entire ability set across the universe.
So it's explicitly providing tools for truly epic, reality-shattering campaigns if the GM chooses to allow that level.
Exactly. And capping it at 100 provides a defined upper limit. It reinforces that the GM sets the boundaries of the possible through the impact ceiling they choose for their campaign.
Okay, let's talk about how players actually get these abilities. They're grouped into themed ability sets, like Arcane Warfare or Cybernetic Enhancements. And there's a really interesting strategic choice when spending ability points, AVP, at Creation Option 2, the Combine then Split method. This sounds like it needs careful explanation.
It does, as it's a key trade-off. So at character creation, the basic cost is simple. One ability point, or ABP, buys you one impact level. If you get, say, 7 ABP to spend on powers, you could put all 7 points into one set, like psionics. That gives you a single, highly focused IL-7 psionic set.
And based on what you said earlier, that IL-7 set would allow for up to 7 different specific psionic sub-abilities.
Correct. High power ceiling, IL-7, moderate breadth, 7 sub-abilities. That's option 1, focus.
Okay, now explain option 2. Combine, then split. What if I take those same 7 ABP?
Right. If you want more versatility instead of raw power, you can choose to split those 7 points across 2 different ability sets. For instance, you could decide to create an IL-5 biokinesis set and a separate IL-2 telepathy set. That adds up to 7 points spent.
Okay, so I have 2 sets now, one weaker than the other. What about the number of sub-abilities?
Here's the crucial part of option 2. The maximum number of sub-abilities allowed in each of those sets is based on the total points spent, which was 7.
Wait, so my IL-5 biokinesis set gets 7 sub-abilities, and my IL-2 telepathy set also gets 7 sub-abilities.
Exactly. You sacrifice that top-end power. You don't have an IL-7 ability anymore, but you dramatically increase your overall versatility. Instead of one IL-7 set with 7 tricks, you now have 2 different sets, IL-5 and IL-2, with a combined total of 14 different sub-abilities.
Oh, okay. That's a huge trade-off, power versus breadth.
Yeah.
It lets players build focused specialists or versatile utility characters using the exact same point pool.
Precisely. It's a core design choice baked right into ability creation, supporting different playstyles within the unified framework.
Now, a necessary balancing rule. Stacking effects. If I have multiple defensive abilities running, say a force field, defense type, and psychic shielding, also defense type, do I get the benefits of both?
Absolutely not. This is critical to prevent runaway numbers and keep things manageable. The rule is clear. Effects of the same type, offense, defense, support, utility, and so on, do not stack. Only the single best, most potent effect of that type that applies in the current situation takes effect.
So you use your best shield, not all your shields at once.
Right. It forces tactical choices about which ability is most useful now, rather than just layering on redundant buffs or debuffs.
Okay. And finally, for this section, the system offers an optional mana system. This sounds like another GM dial, used if you want resource management for powers beyond just spending action points. When would a GM typically switch this on?
It's primarily for when the GM wants using magic, psionics, or maybe high-tech gadgets to feel like it has a tangible cost, requiring players to manage a resource pool carefully. If you want spellcasters to worry about running out of juice, you implement mana.
How is the mana pool determined?
The mana pool size is usually based on a chosen attribute, typically willpower or intelligence, though the GM could designate a specific mana attribute. You take that attribute score and multiply it by a campaign multiplier set by the GM.
And that multiplier really sets the tone for how readily available power is.
Definitely. The examples given are like X5, multiplier for a low magic or gritty setting mana is scarce, every cast counts. A10, multiplier is considered standard fantasy or sci-fi. You have resources, but you can't just go Nova constantly. Then you have things like X100 multiplier for cosmic or maybe JRPG-style campaigns where characters are expected to frequently unleash powerful abilities.
And casting an ability just costs mana equal to its IL.
Usually, yes. An IL-5 spell costs 5 mana. An IL-15 ability costs 15 mana. Simple 1-to-1. Although they do mention an optional tweak for very high-power games. Maybe for abilities above IL-10, the cost could be halved, IL-A2, to allow those high-level characters more throughput, preventing them from running dry after just 1 or 2 big actions. It's another fine-tuning dial for the GM.
Okay, that covers the power system. Let's move into Section 4, how things actually resolve in play, especially combat. Fluid combat, resolution mechanics, and teamwork. We touched on action points AP earlier. Let's dig into that AP economy.
Right. The AP economy is central to the tactical flow. As we said, your starting AP per round equals your chosen initiative attribute, dexterity, or intelligence. And most core actions you'd take in a dynamic situation, moving, making an attack, using one of those IL abilities, actively defending cost 1 AP.
So every action has a direct cost against your limited pool for the round.
Exactly. It forces constant calculation. Do I attack twice? Or attack once and save an AP to defend? But the really innovative part, the thing that breaks the mold of traditional I go, you go turns, is that reactive defense we mentioned.
Yeah, explain that again, because it seems crucial for keeping players switched on even when it's not their turn.
It is. Because there's no passive defense score, when an enemy targets you with an attack, you have an immediate decision to make right then and there. Do I spend 1 AP from my current pool to try and defend, whether that's dodging, parrying, mentally resisting, whatever fits?
So you can defend multiple times in a round as long as you have AP left.
Yes. If you were cautious and ended your turn with, say, 3 AP remaining, you could potentially attempt to defend against 3 separate attacks made against you before your next turn comes around. But if you went all out on offense and spent all your AP, you're a sitting duck until your next turn refreshes your points.
That makes holding back AP a valid tactical choice for survival.
Absolutely. It keeps the resource management dynamic throughout the entire combat round, not just on your own initiative count. Players are constantly evaluating threats and deciding whether to spend that precious AP to avoid harm.
And since defenses, like attacks, rely on opposed rolls, what about the extremes? Critical hits and fumbles.
They have pretty standard but impactful effects. A natural 20 on the d20 is a critical success. On an attack roll, it typically means you deal double damage. Boom.
Nice.
For non-combat rolls, a natural 20 means you succeed exceptionally well. Maybe it counts as 2 successes if you're doing an extended action, or the GM might grant you a temporary narrative advantage. You decipher the code so quickly, you also spot a hidden message.
And the dreaded natural 1.
The natural 1 is a critical failure. The action fails, often spectacularly, your gun jams, you slip on the ledge, you offend the diplomat. But, and this is key for player morale and narrative momentum, rolling a natural 1 immediately grants you 1 story token.
So the absolute worst mechanical result gives you the game's main currency for narrative influence. That's a great design choice. Turns potential frustration into an opportunity.
Exactly. It ensures failure is never just a full stop. It pushes the story forward in a different way. Now, the system also uses advantage and disadvantage roll 2d20. Take the higher result for advantage, the lower for disadvantage. And it can stack once, meaning you might roll 3d20 in extreme cases.
Okay.
But there's a critical rule mentioned in the source material about how GMs apply modifiers to prevent things getting out of hand.
Right. Avoiding those situations where you stack 5 different small bonuses and suddenly failure is impossible.
Precisely. The guideline is that the GM should generally choose either to adjust the difficulty class, DC of the check, or grant advantage-disadvantage based on the circumstances. They typically shouldn't do both for the same reason.
Keeps things cleaner. If the task is just inherently harder, raise the DC. If circumstances favor the character, grant advantage.
That seems to be the intent. It prevents the math from spiraling and keeps the focus on the core role and the narrative situation.
Let's talk about teamwork. Players naturally want to help each other out. The system offers 2 specific mechanics for this: the basic help action and something called focused aid. What's the difference?
The standard help action is simple. A helper makes an appropriate skill check related to the task. If they succeed, the primary character attempting the main action gets advantage on their roll. 1 helper, 1 instance of advantage.
Okay, straightforward. What about focused aid?
Focused aid is designed for situations where multiple characters can meaningfully contribute specific expertise to the same task. Think multiple engineers working on different subsystems of a failing engine, or several detectives pooling clues.
Right.
In this case, each helper who succeeds on their check grants the primary actor a flat +2 bonus to their final roll. This can stack up to a maximum of +6, so 3 successful helpers. The crucial distinction is that focused aid replaces advantage. You get the flat bonus instead of rolling extra dice.
So the team has to decide. Is it better to give the main person advantage, rolling 2 dice, taking the best? Or is it better to get a guaranteed +2, +4, or +6 bonus from reliable helpers?
Exactly. It's another tactical decision point based on the situation and the perceived reliability of the helpers versus the potential high roll from advantage.
And for those really big multi-stage challenges, cracking a high-security vault, researching an ancient ritual, navigating a minefield, the system uses extended actions, sometimes called progress tracks.
Yes. The GM defines the task by 2 numbers: successes needed and failures allowed. For example, cracking the vault might be 5 successes needed, 2 failures allowed. Players then take turns making relevant skill checks against a set DC.
And getting a really good roll helps more.
Does. If you beat the DC by 10 or more, that's an enhanced success, and it counts as 2 successes towards the goal. This speeds things up if the characters are performing exceptionally well.
What happens if you reach the failure limit before getting enough successes? Does everything just stop?
No, and this ties back to that earlier principle, failing forward. The system strongly encourages the GM that even if the extended action track fills up with failures, the story shouldn't just hit a wall.
So failure doesn't mean nothing happens.
Right. Instead, failure should introduce a significant complication or consequence. The source material suggests 4 main categories for this: introducing a cost, you succeed but lose something valuable. Increasing the time pressure, you succeed but barely, and oh, something else is worse. Escalating the risk, you succeed but attract unwanted attention or take damage. Or changing the position, you succeed but end up in a much worse tactical or narrative spot.
So every roll, success or failure, drives the narrative forward, just potentially in painful ways.
That's the goal. Keep the story moving, keep the tension rising.
All right, we've got characters, powers, actions, and resolutions. Let's look at Section V, customization, advancement, and the big genre dials, starting with advancement earning experience points, XP. Why did the designers split XP into 3 separate pools that can't be mixed? That sounds like a potential headache.
It definitely adds a layer of tracking for the players and GM, no doubt, but the design reason behind it is pretty strong. It forces balanced character development. The 3 pools are Attribute XP, Skill XP, and Ability XP.
And you absolutely cannot spend Attribute XP on skills or Skill XP on abilities.
Correct. They are completely separate currencies. You earn Attribute XP primarily by overcoming physical or mental challenges, pushing your innate limits. You earn Skill XP by successfully using your trained skills. And you earn Ability XP by effectively using your extraordinary powers. Magic, tech, psionics, etc.
So what does this prevent? What's the balancing act here?
It prevents players from creating skewed characters unintentionally or intentionally min-maxing in weird ways. For example, you can't just spend all your time casting spells, earning Ability XP, and then use that XP to suddenly boost your strength attribute without ever actually lifting anything heavy or engaging in physical activity in the game.
I see. It forces you to engage with all aspects of your character concept if you want to advance them holistically. You have to actually do physical things to get physically stronger via Attribute XP.
Precisely. It makes advancement feel more earned and thematic. You have to use your skills to improve your skills. You have to test your powers to improve your powers. And advancement itself is sequential. You can't just jump from level 2 to level 4. You have to buy level 3 first. The cost to advance is typically based on the level you're moving to, multiplied by that big genre dial.
The genre multiplier. This seems like the GM's primary tool for controlling the campaign's overall pace.
It really is. The GM sets this multiplier usually AIC1, A2, or AIC3 right at the beginning, and it impacts the XP cost for everything. Attributes, skills, and abilities.
So Egg 1 means fast advancement.
Yeah. Egg 1, fast-paced, makes everything relatively cheap. Good for shorter campaigns or high-octane games where you want rapid power growth. Egg 2, standard, is the baseline, balanced progression, but Egg 3, gritty, makes advancement significantly more expensive. That cost to go from Attribute 4 to 5 might normally be 4 XP, but in an X3 game, it costs 12 XP.
Wow. That really slows things down and makes each point of advancement feel like a major achievement, perfect for a grim, low-power setting.
Exactly. It forces players to be much more deliberate about where they spend their hard-earned XP and reinforces the tone of the campaign.
Now, let's talk about story tokens. We know players get them from rolling natural ones, or sometimes the GM awards them for great role-playing or accepting dramatic setbacks. What can players actually do with them?
They provide direct narrative agency, a way for players to influence the story beyond just their character's stats and skills. You can hold a maximum of 5 at a time, so you can't hoard them indefinitely. They're meant to be spent.
And there's a tiered spending system, minor versus major influence.
Right. Spending 1 token grants you minor influence. This lets you do things like reroll a single die you just rolled, but usually before the GM declares the outcome, grant yourself advantage on your next roll. Or, and this is neat, suggest a minor plausible element be true about the scene.
Like what?
Like, I spend a story token to say I recognize the insignia on this guard's uniform from a previous encounter. Or, I spend a token to declare there's a loose grate in the floor over here I might be able to pry open. Small, helpful details that fit the context.
Okay. And what about spending 3 tokens? That's for major influence.
Yes, spending 3 tokens allows for much bigger narrative shifts. The main examples are introducing a dramatic twist, something significant and surprising, like, I spend 3 tokens to reveal that the villain monologuing at us, that's actually my character's mentor, presumed dead, or enacting a heroic moment, which often translates to automatically succeeding on one critical high-stakes action, assuming it makes narrative sense. You know, the desperate leap across the chasm, the 1-in-a-million shot.
So it's the player's emergency button for ensuring a crucial moment goes their way, or for adding a major plot point.
Pretty much. It gives players a direct hand in shaping the dramatic peaks of the story.
All right. The biggest genre dial of all, though, seems to be the impact ceiling. This is the absolute hard limit on how powerful abilities can get in the entire campaign world.
This is probably the single most important decision a GM makes when setting up their last Daydream campaign. Setting the maximum allowed impact level, IL, fundamentally defines the scope and scale of the game.
So if the GM sets the impact ceiling at IL7,
Then the campaign is going to be gritty, street level. Characters will be highly skilled mortals, maybe with very minor supernatural tricks or low-level gadgets. Powers just don't get stronger than that. Think gritty detective noir or low fantasy survival horror.
what if the ceiling is higher, say IL25? The book calls that reality lens level.
Now you're in the realm of high-powered superheroes or epic fantasy. Characters can have abilities that significantly warp local reality, creating pocket dimensions, controlling weather patterns, maybe even limited time manipulation. The stakes are much higher.
And an IL100 transcendent ceiling.
That's a cosmic campaign. Players might be playing as demigods, cosmic entities, or beings wielding technology capable of altering fundamental forces. The scale is vast, dealing with threats to entire planets, timelines, or the fabric of reality itself. The ceiling is the absolute boundary.
And finally, the system even integrates things like different species or ancestries using this same framework, with a clever balancing rule, the compensation rule.
Yeah.
This sounds potentially complicated.
It's actually quite elegant once you grasp it. The idea is to allow for flavorful racial traits, like an elf's night vision or a dwarf's resilience, without making some races mechanically superior starts. So you define racial traits as ability sets with specific ILs. Maybe an elf's innate low-light vision is effectively an IL5 utility ability set. The GM looks at all the available races in their setting and identifies which one has the highest total value of beneficial IL-based traits. Let's say the elf package adds up to IL5 worth of useful stuff.
What about a player who chooses to play a baseline human, who in this setting might have no inherent IL abilities? Are they just weaker starting out?
No, and that's where the compensation rule comes in. To ensure fairness and balance right from character creation, any character whose chosen race provides less than the maximum beneficial IL value, in our example, less than the elf's IL5, receives free ability points equal to the difference.
So the human player would get 5 free ability points they could spend on any IL5 or lower ability set they choose, perhaps reflecting human adaptability or specialized training, to bring them up to par with the elf's starting package.
Exactly. It ensures that choosing a race is primarily a flavorful and thematic decision, not one that inherently makes you stronger or weaker mechanically at level 1. Everyone starts on a relatively even playing field in terms of raw power potential, regardless of their species' innate gifts.
So putting it all together, adapting Last Daydream from, say, a high fantasy epic to a gritty cyberpunk thriller isn't about throwing out the rules and learning a new system. It's about the GM adjusting these key dials, setting a low impact ceiling, maybe IL7, imposing lower attribute caps, like level 4, maybe using a high XP multiplier, A3, to make advancement tough.
While potentially emphasizing skills like technology and streetwise over magic or psionics, the core engine D20 rolls, oppose checks, DCs, action points, the structure of skills and abilities remains exactly the same. Players know how the game works, only the context and the power limits change.
It really is aiming for that unified field theory of RPG design. The underlying physics are constant, just the universal constants, like the speed of light or the strength of gravity, or in this case, the impact ceiling and XP cost, are adjusted by the GM to create the desired universe.
That's a good analogy. The resolution mechanics stay reliable, the resource management via AP and potentially mana is consistent, and that all-important impact scale defines the flavor and the limits, freeing everyone up to focus on the story being told within those agreed-upon boundaries.
Well, this has been a truly comprehensive deep dive into the architecture of Last Daydream. We've gone from the basic D20 roll all the way up to reality-altering powers. It feels like a system that, while built on familiar foundations, uses its interconnected scales and deliberate design choices to offer potentially immense flexibility.
I think the elegance, if it achieves its goals, really does lie in that unification. You have the impact scale setting the power level for everything extraordinary. You have the skill cap, ensuring a logical link between innate talent and learned skills. The action point system demanding constant tactical engagement. And those 3 separate XP pools forcing balanced thematic growth. It all fits together.
It definitely positions the Game Master not just as a referee, but as a true campaign architect, carefully setting those dials, the impact ceiling, the XP multiplier, maybe the mana system, to craft a very specific genre feel. But the players always operate within a consistent, understandable rules framework.
And what's truly fascinating, and something the source material really leans into, is the sheer narrative power implied by the upper end of that impact scale. It doesn't just define what your character can do, it defines the fundamental limits of the reality you're playing in. Given that the scale explicitly includes abilities at IL 30 that can define new facts about the world, and IL 70 powers that can reshape reality.
Which naturally leads us to one final, rather mind-bending question for you, the listener, to ponder. If you possessed an ability at the absolute peak of this system, a transcendent IL 100 ability, capable of rewriting the very laws of existence within your game world, and you could target just one fundamental law, be it physics, magic, or social reality, what single essential rule of your universe would you choose to alter first?